All right, we're meeting here with Jon Love. Now, Jon actually was one of the guys who worked on my Achilles issue way back in 2015, 2016, I think it was. And so now Jon is going to be going through my gait analysis that I filmed the other day at Run Lab. And he's going to reference my first video that I did back in the day as well. So, Jon, take it away and let's see what we got.
All right. Yeah, this is pretty exciting because we've done comparative analysis in the past. It's usually about 6 to 8 weeks apart. In this case, it's a few years apart, so it's going to be fun to show you how much your mechanics have changed and progressed over these last couple of years. So let me start by just sharing my screen with you. So you able to see that okay?
Yeah, got it.
Awesome. So I wanted to first show you a photograph of your ankles from behind. So we took this on the day in which we filmed you for this analysis. And what you can see here is that left ankle is being a little bit stuck in pronation. So again, as we talked about before, pronation is when your foot kind of rolls inward and you're getting stuck there. And this is the same thing I want to show you throughout your running mechanics that we can see here statically. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So basically what you came to see us for is this left medial shin pain, and we want to take stress off that left piriformis by improving the control of your pronation cycle. So what you'll see here on this left side is your pronation cycle, and this is through that load acceptance portion of gait. So when you're running, there's really two phases, the propulsive phase and the shock absorbing phase. And what we worked on a lot the first time is the propulsion phase because you were a bit calf dominant, kind of overusing your calf and Achilles. This time I want to focus more on the shock absorption side because as you can see right here from initial contact all the way through your mid stance, which is that lowest point in your gait cycle, so right there to right here, you're really slamming into pronation and then getting stuck there a little bit. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
So in order to take stress off your shin, what we're going to want to work on is some posterior tip strength, some gait drills, and I'm a little bit tempted to consider putting a wedge in your shoe, and we'll talk about shoe choice at the end of this analysis and talk about some ways we can do this through shoe choice as well as strength. But I'm also tempted to keep you in the same pair of shoes because I know how much you like your Skechers, and I feel like we could use a wedge within the shoe to kind of limit this ankle's ability to pronate. But I do want you to avoid stability shoes with a strong medial post because that's going to stop your foot from pronating altogether. We still want you to pronate to absorb shock. We just want to slow it down and control it a little better. Make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Awesome. So let's take a look at the old video. You'll see a pretty big difference. So to be has significantly changed. What we see here in the video on the right is you've got a kind of hunched over posture, your elbows are stuck out to the side. We actually have the same issue with those ankles as far as the pronation cycle. If I can pause one just right, you can see here, even back in, this is December of 2015, I believe. And we can see here kind of the same issue, which is that ankle being stuck in pronation. So this is something that will be familiar to you because we worked on it in the past, but look how much more stable your hips are. Remember in the past, we talked about the contralateral hip drop coming from the relative weakness in the glutes. We can see here now you are much, much more stable in your hips. So that's a significant improvement. Also with the forward lean, your body is no longer as hunched over. We can see that from the side view. So you can see here you're much more upright, like so, in your posture versus this one where you're quite a bit more lean forward. Maybe a more fair comparison though. So right here, you can see now these two lines don't match up at all, where these are actually much closer to one another. Make sense?
Yeah, okay.
So posture's improved, hip drops improved, ankle is about the same. We're still seeing you kind of getting slammed into pronation. I wanted to show it to you from the front as well. So you can see here when you make contact, you're hitting a little bit too much on the outside edge of your foot, like so. In the past, we talked about crossover step, and that's when your foot crosses over midline.
Yeah.
You're still crossing over a little bit. Your speed, because you travel as fast as you do, it's more acceptable to have a narrow stance width, and you set up a bit more for speed and agility. But I would like to continue working on stance width a little bit because as we can see in these videos, you are hitting just a little bit too much on the outside edge of your ankle. Along with the posterior tib strength we talked about before for controlling the pronation cycle, we can also work on your peroneal strength, which is a little tiny muscle down the outside edge of your leg like so. And if we can get that muscle stronger, it'll actually help evert the foot or get your big toe closer to the ground so that when you make contact, not only we want to get your stance width a little wider by getting your leg a little farther away from midline, about the width of your thumb right here, about 1/8 of an inch or so between your foot and your midline. But we can also use this muscle strength to pull that foot just a little flatter for contact. And I think that's really going to help with the posterior tib, because currently, I'll show you here at your barefoot video, currently it's not just that you're getting stuck in pronation, it's also that you're going there too rapidly. So from initial contact, which is this moment right here, so from initial contact all the way to the bottom of your load acceptance, which is here, your foot is dropping into that pronation cycle very rapidly. Then you get stuck there a little bit, so when you go to push off, we want to see that foot resupinate, so as it's resupinating, it becomes more rigid to give you a nice lever to push off of. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me show you it from behind one more time, and I'll show you how we determine that it is coming off a little too early. So just find right here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so what I want to show you is that as your heel comes off the ground, we want to see your foot resupinating through the push-off. So as you go to push off with that foot, we want to see your foot going from that pronated position into a neutral and then a resupinated position as you push off. And to recap, that's to create a more rigid foot, give you a nice rigid lever to push off of. And what we're going to see is as your foot goes to create that propulsion, which is right here, as your heel starts to come off the ground, right there, we can see some space where the heel has come off, and yet your foot is still overly pronated. So what we'd like to see at this moment is your ankle at least be in neutral, preferably just a little bit supinated, because if it's a little bit supinated, we know that your arch is very rigid. Currently, because the foot is so far in the pronation, the foot is still soft and overly extended. So as you go to push off, you're putting a ton of force through that posterior tib, which is, again, that muscle you're currently having problems with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Awesome. So to recap, what we'd like to work on is some posterior tib strength to help control that pronation cycle a little better. We're going to want to work on some peroneal strength. And again, that's that muscle that's running down the outside of your leg here from the front view. And that's to help create a little more eversion or get that foot a little flatter when you're striking the ground. I didn't go into as much detail, but the idea there is we've already worked on your stance width quite a bit, and we've already got you from a pretty significant crossover step to the appropriate stance width. So to get that foot a little flatter, the last move needs to be more about the ankle, less about the stance width, especially since your speed in which you run already allows for a narrow stance width, because you're well kind of make that mark as far as whether you should be a narrow stance width or a wide, more stable stance width. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
All right, so that is all I have for you biomechanically. I'm going to shift now towards going over your map and talking about your shoe choice. But before I do, is there anything else you wanted to look at or any questions you have?
No, well, another thing that I've had just a little bit of, which is probably I can see why now, is just under the ball of my foot, under my big toe joint, has like been getting a little bit sore as well. Do you think that's because I'm slamming my big toe into the ground with my foot position?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you can see my hands, okay. What happens is when you hit in the inverted position, so right now you're hitting on the outside edge of your foot, I want to strengthen the peroneal to pull that foot a little flatter, because right now the way you're striking the ground has your big toe quite a bit off the ground. But when you strike, you have to rapidly pronate, and when you rapidly pronate like that, you're slamming your big toe in that first ray into the ground. So that could absolutely create some bruising, discomfort, and so forth right here from that rapid pronation cycle. But I've also argued that being stuck in pronation creates problems too, because when your foot gets stuck in pronation, so here's my hand going from supination into pronation, and this would be the big toe. So if I get stuck in pronation like this, when I go to push off, you're loading that big toe and you're loading that first metatarsal in your initial propulsion, because right now your foot should be resupinating and you should be pushing off like this as opposed to like this. So you're kind of pushing through those first two toes, really that big toe and that first metatarsal joint, as opposed to here, which is what we call a high gear toe off, and use the full length of your foot to create a lever to push off. So now let's take a look at this on your foot, and I'll show you the exact same thing I'm talking about with my hand. All right, so watch your ankle, and what we'll see is right here, since you're still in pronation, you're loading the medial side of your foot. So you can see that your little toe is almost off the ground. So if your little toe is almost off the ground, we can deduce that your big toe is being really forced into the ground. So if you watch right through here, the last thing to touch the treadmill is your big toe. So all the way through your propulsion cycle, from the moment in which your heel comes off the ground all the way until your big toe leaves the ground, you're loading that big toe and that whole medial side of your foot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Now here's the good news. The solution is the same that we talked about for the left posterior tib or the left shin pain. If we can decrease the speed in which your foot pronates by controlling it better, and then get it to resupinate quicker within the gait cycle, so as you're transitioning from shock absorption into propulsion, if you get that foot resupinated and firm, give you something nice and rigid to push off of, it will all solve not only the shin pain, but it should take a lot of stress off your big toe as well. So you don't have like a laundry list of things to work on. If we can just solve that ankle mechanic through the shock absorption and propulsion, I think at that point you've got your gait looking really good. I mean, foot strike's looking good, shock absorption is looking good, your postures have made huge improvements. You used to have a kind of an overstride heel strike too, so I'll show you that in a moment. You used to strike way out in front of you on your heel like so. Same thing on the right. You can see your contact point was way out here in front of you, where your center of mass is back here somewhere, and your foot strike's happening out here. To compare that to current, so right, so in the air, so right there's contact. And you can see now you've got much closer to your center of mass. Your knee has got better flexion in it, and so forth. I'm getting kind of lines here, but what you can see hopefully is that your foot is farther underneath you, your center of mass is over your foot, your knee is nice and flexed, you're striking on the rear foot as opposed to on the heel. So here you got the knee locked out, landing on the heel. So I think in a general sense, your mechanics look a lot better. Now, that's almost obvious. You've been working on it now for 3 to 4 years really hardly, so you should be happy with this progress, but also want to continue to work with that left ankle, because I think right now it's the last thing that's kind of holding you back from having no pain when you run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, cool, man. So let's take a look at your map. So this is your shoe recommendation. For your shoe recommendation, we want to keep you in kind of a semi-curved shoe. This is to accommodate for the shape of your foot. So if we take a look at the bottom of these shoes, I'll show you what I mean by straight last. Last is just the platform in which it's built on. So we're trying to describe the shape of it. Somebody with a arch like yours is going to fit better into a semi-curved to a curved last. Now you do have a collapsing arch, so when you fully bear weight, your foot does flatten out, but that's what we're going to try to get rid of through the strength of the ankle, and like I mentioned earlier, possible wedge. But the point is, because your foot is shaped a little bit like this, or like we see here, we don't want to keep you in this type of shoe. This spec is not usually included with the purchase of a shoe, so you kind of just have to eyeball it. I want you to just flip the shoe over, look at the bottom, and measure from the point of the shoe to the heel and see how much curvature it has. Also know that these aren't like 3 standard shapes. It's a spectrum, so you'll find everything in between. You can usually ask the manufacturer and contact them directly and say, what last are you guys using? Straight last is pretty rare and kind of hard to find. The ones we recommended for you, which is the fully curved, the semi-curved, are easy to find. So this shouldn't be a difficult thing for you to find, but just know when you're looking at shoes, let comfort win. We want it to be more comfortable, and your foot is going to fit better into these more curved shoes. The next thing is we're recommending a low cushion shoe. You're currently in kind of a moderate cushion shoe. That's totally fine. High cushion shoe, if you wanted to cycle through one like you used to run in a very high cushion shoe, this guy here, we're fine with that. Just make sure you're cycling between shoes if you are running in a really high cushion shoe, because it kind of deadens the proprioceptive feedback you get from your feet. So the nerve endings in your feet communicate with the ground, and the more cushion you have in there, the difficult that is to maintain and improve with. And right now we're trying to mess with your ankle mechanics, and we're trying to get your foot to be supinating quicker, and it's easier if the shoe is a little more low cushion, a little more rigid. You get better feedback from the ground, you can feel things better, and you can basically track the progress a bit more intimately because you get better feedback from your feet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm like you said, I like the sketches, the raises that I've been running in them. Yeah, if I can stick with that shoe, then that'd be awesome. But I know there's a new race coming out, which is even just a little bit different again. So we have to see see the stats on that shoe when it comes out and make sure it fits the criteria.
Yeah, it should, because your criteria is very allowing. Basically, we recommended a 4 to 12 millimeter offset, so stay away from minimalist shoes, nothing, real low drop. We recommend that you keep a little arch buildup or insert. So this is what I was talking about with the wedge. I'm going to contact whichever gait specialist you're working with I think we had you coming in sometime in the next couple of weeks to work on gait mechanics. I'm going to talk to probably Dr. Fridley and Dr. Hallis about getting you into one of those wedges to see what it does to your mechanics. It might just be a short-term fix. I'm not recommending this for like a long-term solution. I think the long-term solution needs to be the strength we're going to build through the exercises and drills. That being said, I think as far as the new razors coming out, they should be fine, because as long as they're not a really low drop shoe, they are going to be semi-curved or curved. They're going to be a low to moderate cushion. They're going to have that wider forefoot with the nice fly knit upper that all shoes are pretty much switching to these days to allow for more flexibility in the upper. And right now we think one training shoe is fine because your mileage is not crazy high. So if you want to just replace the razors you have with a new pair, I think that's totally fine. And then I would say let's experiment with the wedge. Those are your new homework plan for some strength. And start monitoring your progress. And we want you to be training right now too, so feel free to run and experiment. All the gait stuff we messed with in the past as far as glute strength, I would continue doing that, because as we've talked about in the past, the glute media specifically can help control the rotation of your femur. Glute max can as well. So if you're working on glute strength and controlling the rotation of your femur, it makes it much easier to control the pronation cycle, because it's all connected. As your foot pronates, the tibia internally rotates. When the tibia internally rotates, so does the femur, and the glute can control the femur. So matter of fact, let me go ahead and show you a picture of exactly what I'm talking about. So basically, it's when everything rolls inward as you're bearing weight. And it's kind of no, it's not what I wanted. Okay, here we go. So if you look at somebody's foot that is going into pronation, what you're going to see is everything tries to rotate with it. So as this foot starts to rotate inward and pronate, the tibia is going to internally rotate. Because the tibia is internally rotating, so does the femur. So you can actually use the strength of the glutes to control the rotation of the femur, which will in turn help you control the pronation of your foot. So our focus is going to be ankle strength. Our focus is going to be drills for footwork and glute supination. But I did want to recommend to continue with the glute strength, even though your hips are looking more stable, and that is what we were using it for in the past, is to stabilize that pelvis, to get rid of the contralateral hip drop. I still want to encourage more glute strength, one, because it's good cross training, and two, because it helps you control that rotation, which will in turn make it easier to control your pronation cycle. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does.
Awesome. Any questions for me?
No, I guess you probably saw in my video me trying to do a single leg squat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was quite humbling.
Entertaining, right? And it's funny because running is nothing more than a bunch of single leg squats, one right after the other. So you'd think being a high level runner with good mechanics, you'd have a pretty single leg squat. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work out that way. But if we can get your glutes stronger and your ankle to stop collapsing, that single leg squat can be a lot easier, because right now everything's trying to collapse inward. Your knees moving towards midline, your ankles getting stuck in pronation, and everything's rotating in, because right now you're not controlling the rotation of your femur and the collapsing of your arches through relative strength. Because remember, this is not about your strength compared to mine or your strength compared to everybody else's. It's about your body compared to your body. So is your right glute medius strong enough compared to the other muscles in your right hip? in order to do its job, like stabilizing pelvis, stabilizing rotation, femur, and so forth. So the idea being is its relative strength, so it can become imbalanced, which is why we want to encourage you to continue cross-training with glute strength, and we're going to add in now ankle stuff. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess like you've got some exercises and stuff, obviously, for me to work on.
Yes. So we're gonna have you come in for a gait training day where we'll mess with some gait exercises, some drills, and some strengthening. The strengthening exercises will be given to you as homework, just as we did in the past. Where in the past I wrote it all down by hand. Now we have actual sheets we hand out with videos that go along with it, so you can watch your exercises from home. So the idea being, we want you to be able to have access to the resources that we'll build for you on your homework day, so you can start working on this stuff at home about 3 to 5 times a week. We'll probably encourage you to come in the sense to continue soft tissue work as well, just for pain management. But the idea being, we're going to give you a whole new list of exercises like we did in the past, now focusing on ankle strength. But I did want you to continue working on the glute stuff we did in the past, because it continues to be good for you as a run. Make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like a good plan.
Awesome, man. Any questions for me?
No, not at the moment.
All right, well, you were good to go then. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. That's all I had for you. Definitely get a hold of Run Lab so we can get you in for some gait training. I thought we had you scheduled already, but I may be mistaken there. But call and get yourself on the books and do some training.
Yeah, I'm planning on stopping in on my next trip down to Austin, which hopefully will be sometime, not next week, the following week. So yeah, I'll set up an appointment, and yeah, we'll go through the exercise that I need to do. And it's really quite interesting seeing this like in slow-mo on a camera, seeing exactly what my ankles are doing. It's almost quite alarming, to be honest. It doesn't look good.
You're okay. This is quite common, and it is aberrant movement. Your ankles are moving outside of normal, and they're definitely slamming in the pronation. And your left posterior tib is telling you that, right? That's where that pain is coming from. It's the aberrant movement increasing stress, specifically a tensile force on the posterior tib, as you're essentially trying to absorb that shock. So definitely there's a little breakdown in your mechanics right now, but don't let it be alarming. Just be aware of it. Know that we're working towards fixing it, and monitor your symptoms. If you start getting a lot of pain, we're going to have to back off a little bit on volume, or replace it with something like aqua jogging, cycling. I know you're working towards your half Ironman right now, so there's lots of time you need to spend on the bike and in the water. So if your shin starts to become a larger limiter, we'll just have to train appropriately the other two to take some volume off the ankle while we solve that problem. But don't let it be too alarming. You're going to be okay. I've seen worse, and you can run with ankles that pronate a lot. That's not the problem. The problem is getting stuck there. So don't worry about the amount in which your ankles are moving. That is, that's different for everybody. There's no set standard on that. But what we do want to see is your ankle supinating as you push off, and that's going to be our primary focus. And trying to get that foot a little flatter at contact so you don't have as far to go, making it easier to control. And that's going back to that peroneal strength, which is on the opposite side of the shin, right? Posterior tib runs down the medial side of the shin, the peroneal runs down the lateral side of the shin, and we're going to work on both of those muscles to control your ankle from side to side like that. Make sense?
Yeah, love it.
All right, buddy, that's all I had for you. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hope I'll see you soon. And next time we see you, we'll build you some nice homework. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thanks, John. I appreciate your time.
All right, buddy. Have a good one, Jason.
You